Looks like a normal trackway in the woods, right? But if we glance in either direction, we have something quite extraordinary. Take a look at this. This is a significant bank and ditch that I'm in now, and it doesn't make sense for a number of different reasons. You see, when you look on a map, this just states Grim's Ditch. Well, Grim's Ditch is a smaller boundary marker, just a couple of feet high, maybe a bit more in places, but this thing is huge, and it gets better, because when we map this, this looks more like a kingdom, a 22-mile circle, and it looks like the sort of earthwork you find on a hill fort. Well, I never considered that, because when you look at these on a map, all the individual parts, well, they all look separate. That, however, was clearly a mistake, and it gets better again. Did you notice the yellow line running through the middle? Well, that's Akerman Street, a hugely important Roman road. Right, so we just crossed back over the trackway to this side, because the earthworks here are even bigger. The bank there is probably about 3 meters high as I look at it. I don't know why I didn't start the film here. So how do we know when this was built? Is it sort of a last stand against the incoming threat of the Romans by the late Iron Age? Or are we talking the sub-Roman period, when we have the incoming threat of the Anglo-Saxons? Oh, this is the exact type of mystery I absolutely love, because somewhere hidden in this 22-mile ginormous earthwork is the answer we're looking for. Somewhere hidden in 100 years of archaeology. We just have to find it. So if this significant bank and ditch that I'm stood on right now, about 3 or 4 meter drop down there, was really to defend against the Romans, then something doesn't quite add up. When we think of the end of the Iron Age and the start of the Roman era, 43 AD here in Britain, well, we think of hill forts, but they'd already been out of use 150 years before that point. These sort of structures weren't really in use then, which makes this strange, because whatever this is, it has all the hallmarks of a defensive earthwork. Oh, a huge bank and a deep ditch, and look at where we're standing right now. Look at the landscape out there. This definitely doesn't feel like we're just dividing one area of farmstead and another. On the face of this, at this very early stage, is we're defending everything that's on this side against whatever is on that side. This works as a defensive structure at the moment. The sheer effort involved, this wasn't thrown up in a short period of time. Someone must have asked this question before me. And they did. Around 100 years or so ago, archaeologists started digging into this bank. In fact, this stretch right here, I think Model Farm on the north side, they dug into this in the hope to find out exactly who built this. Now, the first person to take a serious look at this was O.G.S. Crawford. He didn't do any archaeological digs that I can find. However, he did take a look at the map, the landscape, and he considered something that as yet I've not taken into consideration at all, something that's hopefully just up ahead we're trying to find now. Inside this enormous enclosure sat not one Roman villa, but at least 6. Now, all of a sudden, the earthwork now started making sense to O.G.S. Crawford, and he declared this was not of Iron Age construction. This was much later. And here is exactly what I'm looking for today, North Lee Roman Villa. Crawford believed that Britain was no longer Roman. The empire had collapsed, Anglo-Saxon groups were beginning to settle across eastern Britain, and the wealthy Romano-British villa owners of Oxfordshire, well, they needed protecting. So he suggested that perhaps this enormous earthwork we're seeing wasn't to protect from the incoming invasion of the Romans. It was built instead after the Romans left, that sub-Roman period. We're never quite sure exactly what happened, but we have power vacuums and we have perhaps this series and joined up estates here in this area, and they were protecting themselves against something else. Okay, so we're not going to see the beautiful mosaic today on camera, unfortunately. I kind of like that idea by Crawford. He suggests that we have all this continuation of these villas in this area, and if you're, well, being under threat from something external, well, why would you not protect this rich part of the landscape you've always used? But there is a problem, one that Crawford couldn't answer from a map. So Crawford had his post-Roman theory. These huge earthworks were here, protecting these villas within this area by the significant threat of the incoming Anglo-Saxons. There was just one more problem. You can't date a ditch from a map. Sooner or later someone had to dig, and that someone was David Harden. In 1935 he cut the first trench through Grim's Ditch, and he found out something hugely important: how big it was. a 4-metre difference in the ditch base and the bank top, but frustratingly it couldn't answer the question that everybody wanted answered. Now the goal today was going to show you the exact spot of his next plan. Within a year or two later he decided to do something quite different which would help determine the date. Now if I could have got through those gates on screen now, well I could have done, but it was just too hot in terms of the openness of that. You have to press a button, pedestrian button, and make your way in, but it's 37 degrees today. I'm trying to keep out of the sun, but nevertheless in that point there would be the spot he found where Grimm's Ditch, this huge earthwork, interacted with Akerman Street, the Roman road, and all of a sudden now we can determine what came first if we dig at that exact spot. If the Roman road had sliced through the older ditch, then Crawford's theory was in trouble, but if the ditch had cut across the existing Roman road, Crawford was probably right. Well, Harden believed that right now he had found the answer. He argued there was a broad gap in the earthwork here, almost like a gateway. Even more importantly, he believed Akerman Street altered its course slightly to pass through this opening. Importantly though, his conclusion stated that the ditch came first, and he even gave us a possible date. He suggested early 1st century AD, so very much late Iron Age, before the Romans arrived. Okay, that sounds quite convincing, but imagine if the Roman road came first, then a few centuries later, Roman Britain is collapsing, you decide to build a huge earthwork across this landscape. We wouldn't necessarily block the most important road in and out. Well no, you'd probably leave a gate. Now Harden could well of course have been right, but I don't think what he thought was definitive evidence that crossing point is enough for us just yet. What it does do is something else. It forces us to stop thinking about Roman villas and start thinking about the landscape itself. Now what I mean by that is if this wasn't just protecting this bunch of Roman villas and estates in that sub-Roman period, then what exactly was this ginormous 22-mile earthwork actually doing in the landscape? Now that question would occupy the minds of archaeologists and the like for 50 years or so more. So Harden pushed back the date from post-Roman to pre-Roman. We're now in the Iron Age, seemingly when the Iron Age people, at least 100-150 years prior, would have abandoned the many hill forts that we see dotted around the country. Now in 1976, with David Fine, ironically suggests that, well actually we should now stop looking at the ditch. They contain often very little in the way of archaeology that we can actually sort of date this monument from. So I haven't seen the bank and ditch just yet, but we think it's about maybe 100 yards in those woods. We can't get to them yet, but we will do very shortly. Interestingly though, we did follow Ditchley Road up from Charlbury, maybe like a 2-mile drive, and it's littered with earthworks both sides of it. I wonder how it got its name. Fantastic stuff. I think I can see it for the trees, and we've got a way through now, so let's go take a look. Now, a little over a decade, archaeologist Adrian Copeland here, he would take that challenge very seriously, and he suggested indeed that, well, if we can't date it at the moment, we have to stop trying and guessing and digging for no reason whatsoever. We have to actually look exactly what you'd find inside this huge enclosure. Look at this, here it is. Now there wasn't evidence for dense population across this whole area. That was odd. Instead, scattered throughout the enclosure were Roman villas, early Iron Age settlements and ancient routeways. Now the more that Copeland looked into this, the more he said it feels less and less like a military structure, which is really interesting because here I am now, 4-metre difference. So for that not to be a military structure, with the amount of man hours that would take to build is vast. I can't sort of comprehend it. Well, Copeland said that this was defining a territory, not necessarily defending it. And all the time I've been here staring at this structure, staring at this earthwork, well, Copeland wasn't, he was staring at the inside. And now for the first time the ditch and bank felt like the wrong place to be looking and exploring, so I headed to a place called Shaken Oak. Okay, this is the rather beautiful little village of Wilko, and ahead of me now is the 800-year-old St Peter's Church of the village of the same. And open the door because inside here is nothing of significance for today's video, other than it's a very nice place to cool off. The thing of significance in this area is 2 miles to our south, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. We see again the southern end, the southern side of Grimm's Ditch, and just inside that we note on a map Shaken Oak Farm. Now Shaken Oak Farm has a Roman villa, long since buried under the ground, but it has had a lot of archaeological digs and tells us a lot about today's journey. according to archaeologist John Blair, its story didn't end when Roman Britain collapsed. For years, archaeologists assumed that when Rome left Britain, places like this were abandoned, villas fell into ruin, the landscape changed and new people arrived. You see, places like here, Shaken Oak, places like Chedworth, well, they didn't fit into that story. Well, they found that there were continued occupation after the Romans had left. They even added to those buildings, so we know they were still occupied and we know they were continued to be used. But that wasn't the only remarkable discovery at Shaken Oak Farm. At least 22 people were buried here. Many of them had injuries caused by sharp weapons. For a long time it was tempting to imagine that these were Anglo-Saxon invaders, newcomers pushing west as Roman Britain disappeared. It turned out that wasn't the case at all. You see, archaeologists found that by analysing their teeth and their bones, well, they hadn't grown up across the North Sea or the English Channel at all. In fact, they'd grown up here in Britain. Some appear to have spent their childhoods in western or southwest Britain before ending up here at Shaken Oak. This is absolutely fascinating because we're not looking at Saxon invaders or warriors, we're actually looking at British warriors or people that were here surviving that sort of Roman authority, British, Welsh, whatever you want to call them. But that part of the story didn't end there because the archaeologists found much later activity, coins from the 7th and 8th century, I believe, on that villa site. So people are coming back here, staying here generation after generation. Now this is brilliant because Shaken Oak sits inside the enclosure, so maybe Grim's Ditch wasn't protecting a handful of Roman villas at all. Maybe those villas were here because the landscape had already been important for centuries. If that's true, then maybe we've been looking at Grim's Ditch here, this enclosure, in entirely the wrong way. In steps Tom Moore. Okay, so I travelled 20-30 miles to the west of that area. I'm very near Cirencester. Now, whenever anyone talks about that huge enclosure we've been looking at, well, they always seem to associate it with a place called Baggendon, which is a village sort of a mile up there. And that seems to be for good reason, because have a look at that huge earthwork in the field just there. For decades now, archaeologists and academics alike have been trying to understand Britain's Iron Age centres. And we're not talking hill forts, the image that I would probably conjure up. So Tom Moore, in a recent paper, suggested that perhaps we should be looking elsewhere. I had a really good plan to show you this amazing earthwork on the map, but it's a 6 or 7 foot fence that's stopping me from seeing it. I can see it from here. I'm not sure if you can, but look at this huge earthwork. We'll just take a look up there and see if we can find some more. Absolutely ridiculous. What if power wasn't concentrated in one specific place at all? Imagine somebody 2,000 years from now trying to understand London. They discover Westminster, Canary Wharf, Heathrow Airport, the City of London. Well, if you were then to ask which one of those is London, well, all of them are London, essentially, each of them doing a different job. And Tom Moore believed that, well, the late Iron Age societies certainly acted in that way. That's exactly what we've been seeing inside Grim's Ditch earlier. Shaken Oak, Callow Hill, ancient routeways, Roman villas, Akerman Street running through the middle. Not one isolated community, but instead one landscape. And when you look at it like that, well, maybe that sort of changes your perception. And there is one really amazing sort of notion from all of this that Tom Moore postulates, and that is of the control of movement. Maybe these weren't defensive, but actually maybe we're talking about shaping people's movement through the landscape, whatever form that takes, whether it is military or trade. It's monitoring the movement and making sure you can direct it exactly where you want it. Okay, well, I was just about to round up the video showing you one last earthwork and a very specific conclusion from this video. Until I saw the earthwork on what would be the eastern side of this enclosure here near Baggendon, Cirencester, and it might change the course of what I'm about to say. Have a look at this. Okay, it's thanks to an extremely kind landowner. He's let me into his garden to show you the scale of this. This is absolutely huge. Now, when I sort of came to this part, I was about to draw a conclusion of the video. I was about to say these weren't defensive because this was more of a polyfocal centre. The landscape inside there would have been for many different reasons. It's a society that we're seeing there, like back up at North Oxfordshire. But then I saw this on the maps, and I am suggesting that's at least 5 or 6 metres tall. So now I'm wondering, if you're just monitoring and moving traffic, why are you building something so significant of this? Imagine the man hours this would take to build, and this goes on for a very long way. I'm not sure if this is 22 miles like the other one, but I would say it's at least 4 or 5 miles. It's huge. So now, I don't know, defensive or perhaps instead, as we've said, for moving people. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. This has been really enjoyable. I've been Paul. I'll see you this time next week.